So we are super excited to have Ribka and Taylor with us today from Community Food Advocates. I don't know about you all, but I love learning about values-based food procurement. It is like such a rich topic that has such a widespread and deep impact on food systems work. And so Taylor Pat is the New York State Good Food Purchasing Program campaign manager at Community Food Advocates, which is based in New York City. In her role, she's responsible for bringing together food system stakeholders across the state in an effort to drive advocacy and effective implementation around values-based procurement in public institutions. Taylor believes that coalition building is at the heart of this work and is reflected in the strategy and decision making that happens within the campaign. Throughout her life and work, Taylor has been deeply invested in food systems change and has taken up various roles to help support the development of opportunities for communities to partake in decision making that informs what ends up on their plate. This has included building food cooperatives, managing food procurement operations, and shaping public policy. Taylor received a Master's of Science degree in Food Security and Development from the University of Reading in the UK and a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies and Politics from Hendrix College. And Ribka is the New York State Good Food Purchasing Program campaign director at Community Food Advocates. In her role, she leads the statewide strategy to advance values-based food procurement across public institutions, working in close partnership with advocates, community organizations, unions, policymakers, and institutional leaders throughout New York State. Ribka is responsible for guiding coalition alignment, campaign strategy, and cross-sector collaboration to advance policy adoption and support effective implementation of the Good Food Purchasing Program. She brings a strong emphasis on relationship building, shared governance, and accountability, grounding coalition strategy in the lived experiences of communities most impacted by local and regional food systems. Her organizing and professional background spans programs, policy advocacy, and community engagement, with a focus on strengthening equitable food systems and public sector accountability. Ribka is most energized by work that bridges advocacy, food sovereignty, racial justice, and long-term impact. Fundamentally, she's committed to creating participatory processes that ensure communities have a meaningful voice in shaping food, labor, and purchasing decisions that affect their daily lives. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Ribka and Taylor, who are sharing their own slides.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Oh, wait, Mara, I see you ch chatting. I think you're on mute though. Did you want to come off?
I'm chewing, not chatting.
Oh, okay.
Food is always
Okay.
welcome here. I'm enjoying some cashews. Uh,
Okay, sorry. Continue chewing. Um, Great. Well, I'm going to share my screen, but yeah, thank you, Micah, for the introduction. That was very lovely. Let me know. Uh-oh, let's see if this is going to work.
if you need to request permission.
Oh no. Okay. Oh, wait, I think this is, I'm sorry,
I might be able to pull it up on.
part of the problem is my computer is broken, so I'm having to use my personal computer. Okay, I think it's working
Yes,
now. Do you see?
yes,
Can you
yes, you
see?
can see it.
Okay, great. Um, Slideshow. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Sorry for the little technical difficulty, but it's great to be here with everyone. I'm sorry also for this beam of light that I see that is like coming through my screen, so I hope that's not distracting. But as Micah mentioned, my name is Taylor Pate, and I'm the New York State Good Food Purchasing Program Campaign Manager at Community Food Advocates. Brooke, did you want to say anything before I jump in?
Yeah, I'll just share that my name is Ribka Getechew-McLean as the director of the New York Good Food Purchasing Program efforts here at CFA as well. We work statewide in conjunction also with SOFSA, which is one of our favorite coalition partners across the state. And I use she, her pronouns.
Great. So yeah, we're gonna take about, I'd say like 10 to 15 minutes to present, and then we'd love to answer any questions and just have a conversation with folks here in the room. So today we're going to be chatting about values-based procurement, why the time is now, and about our advocacy to advance what is known as the Good Food New York bill. Um, I guess here's a quick kind of agenda overview of what we're going to be chatting about today. So, we'll give a background on community food advocates and our statewide Good Food Purchasing Program Coalition, which Ribka mentioned. We'll share an overview of the Good Food New York bill, which is a piece of state legislation that's been introduced to the New York State Legislature, why this bill matters for our communities, and what we expect in the 2026 legislative session that's just began. Then we'll highlight SOFSA's engagement with our New York State Good Food Purchasing Coalition and the Good Food New York Bill. SOFSA has been instrumental in this work, and so we wanted to kind of lift up all of the ways in which the Food Policy Council has been engaging with our coalition. We'll talk about a buyer supplier mixer, which is a really exciting event that we're planning, which will be held in Syracuse towards the end of this year, and then share a number of resources and have time for the Q&A. So now I'll pass it over to Rivka.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Taylor. And thanks again, Maura and Micah and Renee and the SOFSA team for inviting us into this space. We may have seen many faces when we attended the SOFSA Food Justice Summit or gathering a few months back, which was also really awesome. And yeah, just an extension of the love that we feel from SOFSA. At Community Food Advocates, we essentially work at the intersection of high impact food policy and coalition building. Coalitions are really important to all of our program areas because we appreciate and want to ensure that all of our work uplifts and makes space for the expertise, the heart, the brilliance of those who are most impacted by the policies that we're collectively working on. We, at the end of the day, want to ensure that all New Yorkers across the state have access to healthy, affordable, plentiful, and culturally appropriate foods. We call ourselves a small but mighty team, and that's a snapshot of our small but mighty team.
Okay, so as part of our work around values-based procurement, we have a couple of different coalitions that we lead. And SOFSA is a part of our New York State Good Food Purchasing Coalition. We're a coalition of individuals and organizations that represent and seek to transform the food system through five good food purchasing program values, which we'll speak more in a moment, to improve institutional procurement in our municipalities throughout New York. So the aim of this coalition is to bring values-aligned producers and suppliers and farmers to our public food serving institutions, like our schools, like our carceral settings, like our hospitals. And so our coalition brings together folks from across the state, which it includes food policy councils. It brings together farmers, farm workers, food banks, environmental lawyers, animal welfare advocates. So a number of folks that span our food supply chain to really advocate around these issues that are so instrumental to really shifting our institutional supply chains. And so this is just a little photo of a few folks that were in the coalition that attended an advocacy day up in Albany, I think a couple of years ago now. So just wanted to kind of include a snapshot. And along with, I should say, this New York State work, there are also two other coalitions in New York City, and then we also have a Buffalo that's leading the work. So this really is a statewide effort to bring government, to bring.
Is Taylor freezing for everybody?
Yeah, Taylor, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, okay. We heard most of what you said. Thanks for passing the baton over my way. I'll just also amplify and lift up that we are also being joined by one of our other coalition members. So if you have questions for Dennis Olson, who is one of our tried and true, very long-term coalition members, he's also here in this space and has been really instrumental on this effort amongst so many others, including, of course, SOSA. So the Good Food New York bill. We've mentioned it a couple of times, and we wanted to just lay out before we jumped into the rest of the presentation, um, our understanding of why we see this bill as being incredibly critical and timely. I should also say, we spoke to a number of public institutional leaders as we were originally developing the language for this bill, close to 5 to 6 years ago. And so this really emerged out of conversations with public institutions like schools and hospitals and jails, senior centers, homeless shelters, food banks, of course, and then other coalition members and all of our coalition members across the state, and really try to understand like what is the rub with state procurement law and how does that affect how localities are able to purchase values aligned food that go beyond cost. And so, with the Good Food New York bill, municipalities would ultimately be supported in operationalizing values-based food procurement. We have a very restrictive part of our New York State's procurement law that requires that in most cases, public institutions, like those that I mentioned earlier, have to buy the food from the lowest responsible bidder or lowest bidder. And that, in a lot of cases, incentivizes a race to the bottom for suppliers to get that low cost, but that oftentimes comes at a cost to all of the other values that we've been lifting up, like local economies and nutrition and sustainability. So this bill would offer a solution to that reality and a concrete solution to threats that so many of us are facing from our federal government. We know that this bill would also support the building up local supply chains and ultimately procuring food that aligns with our community's values. The goals ultimately are twofold if we were to whittle it down. It would to be encouraging large food corporations and large food businesses and agribusinesses to have more ethical practices and to uphold the five value categories. And then on the other hand, it would be to also create pathways for smaller producers that we know have a hard time getting into the institutional marketplace, and supporting those institutions who want to procure from values aligned producers, farmers, and other food vendors with a specific emphasis on BIPOC producers and farmers and food businesses so that they could get institutional contracts. And Taylor mentioned a buyer supplier mixer that we'll be sharing more details about. We'll have a link tree with a bunch of details, and that's going to be in Syracuse in October that we're very excited about.
Great, thank you. So we just kind of wanted to give an overview of what things are going to be looking like in the 2026 legislative session. Um, and actually, can everyone, uh-oh. Did we go through this slide?
No.
Okay, I think it skipped this slide. Okay. Um, so I guess before I head into the 2026 legislative session, we just wanted to give a brief like snapshot and overview of the actual Good Food New York bill and the bill language itself. I know a lot of folks here have been involved in SOFSA's work. And know about the Good Food New York bill. But for those who don't, just kind of want to give an overview of what the actual like text of the language kind of means and looks like and what this would mean for public institutions should the bill, pass and be signed into law. So as Ribka mentioned, essentially the Good Food New York bill amends what's known as General Municipal Law 103, which is the state's lowest responsible bidder provision. So essentially it says that public institutions must buy food from the cheapest bidder. But the Good Food New York bill would provide an option for municipalities and local institutions to implement values-based procurement. So it wouldn't be a mandate. It wouldn't require local schools to purchase from one of these values-aligned vendors. It wouldn't require a local jail to do that. But it does give them the option to opt in to buying from a producer that is values-aligned. And essentially, the way that would work is it would allow a bid, such as an RFP, to be awarded to a qualified farmer or a vendor who is both local, meaning they exist and operate within New York State, and also meet one other value criteria. And those value areas, which are outlined here, are basically part of the Good Food Purchasing Program. That's the kind of the origination of these value areas. And those are animal welfare alignment, environmental sustainability, nutrition, valued workforce, and equity. And I know we don't have a ton of time here, so if folks are more curious about the broader good food purchasing program and like the national movement, and the underpinning for this work, we can definitely like send more information about all of that. But essentially, any in-state producer or farmer would qualify, and then so long as they meet one of these other value areas, that contract could be awarded to that farmer, to that vendor, to that distributor, and they could be paid up to 10% higher than the lowest bidder. So essentially, it provides the opportunity for a farmer that is values aligned, that kind of that meets these community values, to be paid more for their product because they're going above and beyond this kind of lowest responsible bidder. And so we really, I think the part of the intention of this bill is to be awarding those vendors, like Ribka mentioned, those smaller producers that haven't historically been able to access these contracts, who are already doing a lot of this work, and providing them with opportunities to enter the institutional marketplace and actually get paid more money for this values aligned work that they're doing. Okay, so now I'll go back over to the 2026 legislative session. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks for that, Taylor. So we have our legislative session that has already been underway starting this January. And just a quick preview, the legislative session goes traditionally from January until June. I'm sorry, the New York State legislative session tends to go from January to June every year. And this January, there's been a slight change to the bill language. There was an amended what's called the B version of the bill that's just been updated and reintroduced. And this is honestly, as of a couple of days ago, within the last 48 hours or so, where the words dairy products have been added into the nutrition value category, which has come in response to a lot of conversation over the years. Dairy farmers have always been included in the Good Food New York bill since its inception, because New York State farmers were lifted up as getting that price preference. But we just wanted to be responsive to things that we were hearing, and that language has been added to the nutrition value category more explicitly. Coming up in February, specifically February 9th, in just a few weeks, we're going to have a phenomenal Good Food New York Bill Advocacy Day and press conference. In our link tree, we have a sign up form for folks who are interested in joining. We love for folks to join who haven't been a part of the coalition and who haven't yet been to an advocacy day. We'll have prep calls if you've never been up to Albany, just so that you can get an understanding of what the flow of the day will be, how things will be organized. We'll also have stipends, travel stipends, $100 stipends for travel, and $20 stipends for your meal for the day. So we'll share more details in the link for that. Legislators love to hear from their constituents. They love to hear what those realities are that you're experiencing on the ground. So we'd love for you to join and lift those things up. And then between now and the end of the legislative session, we're continuing every day our advocacy with key members of the legislature and the executive chamber, so the governor's office, really amplifying our coalition and our partners' support for this bill. And between now and specifically, hopefully by March, we'll get our bill passed out of the Senate and Assembly. It has passed the Senate. It passed the Senate last year, but ran out of time on the Assembly. But we are hoping for that to take place prior to everything happening with the budget in the next couple of months. And we're going to give our updated letter of support to the governor. Every year, we're in communication with the governor's team, and we have a letter of support. And every year, we're also updating it because we have more folks signing on. So we'd love for the governor to see your name and your organization reflected, to really show the breadth of support across the state. And then at some point before the end of the year, the governor has to sign whether she would want to sign the Good Food New York bill into law. And through and throughout all of this, we've been working towards developing our implementation plan, like Taylor started to allude to earlier. Also working and planning and, dreaming up how this would look with food policy councils across the state, what this would look like in localities that are interested in values-based food procurement. So, alongside these legislative efforts, we're also making sure that we're prepared for implementation too.
Great. So we hope, we know we have a limited amount of time, but I hope for those who didn't know about the Good Food New York bill and kind of what this means in practice, what the impact is on our communities and how the kind of legislative session will work, I hope that that felt informative to you all. One of the things that we kind of wanted to lift up and highlight here was all of the work that SOFSA has been doing to support the passage of the Good Food New York bill as a member of the New York State Good Food Purchasing Coalition. SOFSA, as Ribka has mentioned, has been incredibly instrumental in this work. We've really been building our partnerships with food policy councils across the state because we believe that food policy councils are really instrumental in building support within local community and with grassroots organizations and also within local government. And SOFSA has done just that. And there's a number of ways are outlined here. SOFSA has really done an incredible amount of work, getting buy-in and support from the community around the Good Food New York bill and values-based procurement. We were felt super welcomed at the Food Justice Gathering, having conversations with folks about this work, hearing a lot of excitement and curiosity about this work. And so we've been really grateful to be able to, to come to Syracuse and be involved in those networks and to meet new folks and really understand, get a sense of why this matters to folks in the community. They've been incredibly supportive with the development of our state legislative strategy, with building support with local institutions within Syracuse, such as with the Syracuse City School District, building support and buy-in for members of local government within the county legislature and city government in Syracuse. And then the list goes on, and you can read that here because I know we're running out of time. But I guess all this to say, Syracuse or SOFSA has been really instrumental on this work. We can't do this work without our coalition partners. I think at this point we have over 50, 60 organizations and individuals that are a part of our statewide work. And yeah, we're just very grateful and have been so appreciative of this partnership over the years. Oh, Ribka, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'll go through these very quickly since I started to allude to them. I know that we're running out of time, but we are continuing to work on organizing informational interviews or informational meetings, rather, with local institutions and procurement officials. Sometimes they do feel like a bit of an interview because we want to understand what their challenges are, what their concerns are. So it really does oftentimes exist as an information gathering space. We want to make sure that we're continuing to be responsive of institutional needs as well as folks on the supply chain. And then from there, in cases where this makes sense or is relevant or is aligned with activities that are already happening in different localities across the state, we want to support the ongoing efforts to integrate values-based food procurement priorities into local food systems plans. And then from there, also ongoing, all of these are ongoing tasks and strategies, but we want to continue to develop and set values-based food procurement goals with local public institutions and city government officials.
Okay. So, one of the things that we mentioned at the beginning of, I think, in the agenda portion of things was that we are hoping to be holding a buyer supplier mixture in Syracuse in October of this year. We've been working really hard with a planning crew within our coalition to basically hold a statewide forum with the intention of strengthening New York's institutional food purchasing supply chain by bringing together public institutions and those food procurement staff and values aligned farmers, producers, distributors that are interested in securing contracts with public institutions and other food system stakeholders that are invested in this work. We really want to provide a space for folks to be able to meet and to convene to talk about those bids and those contracts and to really be able to build connections so that the producers and these values lines, producers and suppliers that we want to see into the institutional marketplace are actually building those relationships and connections. And so we've actually been chatting with SOFSA a lot about potential venues and opportunities in Syracuse, knowing that this is a really central location within the state. And that, we want to make it as easy as possible from folks all across the state to be able to attend this mixer. So we are working with our planning crew really hard on building this out, and we'll have more information soon. We do have a QR code. It's part of our sign up sheet that's part of our link tree that we can share at the end. So if folks are interested in getting more information, whether you work within a public institution or you're a farmer or distributor or simply just invested in this work and would like to attend, we can send you more information. And then yeah, finally, if you just click on this little QR code, you'll get all of the different sign up sheets and letters of support and forms that we shared. So if you have any questions about them, there's a lot of information there. You can definitely reach out to Ribka and myself. Ribka, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Not much more. I just wanted to name that I put the link also here in the chat in case folks forget to scan it or anything like that. We have info sheets, sign-on letters for the Good Food New York bill, and also our registration form for the February 9th Good Food New York Bill Advocacy Day. And we hope that you'll join us. Feel free to reach out to us directly via email or even here in the chat. We'll be here for the rest of the meeting, of course, if you have any more questions. And we really appreciate you all at SOFSA, and we appreciate being welcomed into this space, and look forward to many wins on the horizon too with you all. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you both. That's so helpful. I'm going to unspotlight you and see it where the staff is side chatting about timing on the agenda and recognizing that if we go to a breakout room, they're going to feel super fast and rushed. And so rather than doing that, I'm going to suggest that we have some questions for Taylor and Ribka now, and then we'll have a follow-up meeting for folks who are interested in this strategy in particular at some point in the coming weeks, so that we can have our own little breakout room as its own opt-in space. But yeah, open to questions if folks want to raise their hand or come off mute to ask any questions or clarifications from Ribka and Taylor.
Laura, I have two questions. I didn't want to rush this
No, I appreciate
for anybody, though.
That's why we leave the space for
Tried.
silence.
So I guess I had a question about the valued workforce component of the 5 values. I was wondering, do you foresee a period of time where that could become human produced food versus robot produced food? Is there a percentage of as we're looking at advancements in robotics and food production along the way, might that be a space that could kind of grow into a value? And that's I'll just ask them both at the same time, then I can stop. The second was what's to stop the largest vendors, if this does get implemented, from just not dropping their prices 11% the next year and blocking it out? I'm just kind of wondering, because it's up to 10%, you could spend up to 10% more if you're aligned with an appropriate vendor. I'm just wondering, in your mind, as you guys have been thinking about this and talking about this, what's to stop the big institutional folks from not just dropping their price 11% to ice out all of the folks that would have qualified? I'm just wondering what the response there is.
Such great questions, Dan. Thank you. And we hadn't thought about that first question, honestly, about robotics and how it could, build into the Good Food New York bill. But we also see the Good Food New York bill, as just the first step of many, and also working in concert with a lot of other things that are happening within our food ecosystem. But I do want to chew on that a little bit more to see if that would be the space in the bill, or if there are other places within the bill, or perhaps also complementary bills too. But I know we're in our breakout group together, so I'll get your contact information and stay in touch with you. But then also for the second question, that's a great question. One of the things that, and this might be an imperfect or maybe incomplete response, because there's so much to think about within that reality that you were posing. But one of the things that has been really important to us from the inception of the ideation around this bill is that there has to be a lot of local organizing happening. This can't just be a state bill and then public institutions will just kind of figure out how they'll do it or how they'll implement the Good Food New York bill. The idea is that there would be a lot of relationships being built with those values aligned producers. There would maybe even be commitments on, in the local policy front, maybe at a local school or within the local county legislature to build on the Good Food New York bill. This is really, this is the floor and not the ceiling. And this really just does the enabling. It's an enabling bill. And so there's a potential that public institutions on the local level can decide to go possibly a bit further within the scope that's allowed. And they would hopefully also know their local producers that are in alignment with the different values outside of maybe the lowest bidder that has traditionally been in their supply chains that are maybe coming from Washington State or California or China or Colombia, or what have you, and really are able to have that relationship with their supply chain where they know who those suppliers are that align with um, that align with the provisions that make up the Good Food New York bill, and hopefully be able to see them through the institutional purchasing pathways. But there definitely is going to have to be a lot of work on the part of the public institution and hopefully local coalitions that have a good pulse on that supply chain and can also support with any research or advocating that maybe public institutions can't do exactly.
I love the idea that you're bringing together the buyer mixer concept, and I also just think of like the how right like there's so many restrictions on public entities that like the private folks, like individuals that work for entities are able to come in and do this too. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that uplifts and like how you can cross pollinate different folks that they're sellers in one aspect, but they're also buyers in other aspects. So by you bringing this community and the strength, it's going to be exciting to see that bottom up aspects and as it grows out too. Pretty cool. I think it's a really great idea. Thanks for everything.
Oops, I just muted myself. Just to say also about the buyer supplier mixer that buyers and suppliers are obviously welcome, but we also welcome other folks to join, folks who provide technical assistance to suppliers, to these values aligned producers, and other folks within the food system. We do want this to be a wide open space. It's just framed as a buyer supplier mixer because we do want those values aligned producers to get access to institutional buyers that they oftentimes don't have access to.
Dennis, thanks for being here. We have about one more minute before we switch gears to talk about elections, but would love a closing word from Dennis.
Well, I just wanted to quickly respond to the technology issue. I'm Dennis Olson from the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, and we're dealing with AI and other technology issues all the time. Basically, to answer at least from the union perspective, we believe it's part of the right of the human rights of workers to organize a union, and part of one of the benefits of that is to negotiate like the implementation of these technologies, right? Because you don't want to just say no to all of the technologies because some technologies might make it safer for workers and others may take away jobs. So you got to be nuanced about it. And we're at a level in negotiating union contracts where we can address those things directly, and be more nuanced about it and base that in the democratic process of empowering workers in the workplace through their union contracts, to have them be the first line of decision making on that, to give, because they're the ones who know best as far as what could happen.
Thanks, Dennis. Great point. All right. Well, thank you to Ribka and Taylor and to Dennis for joining us. Round of applause. We will be definitely continuing these conversations, and also happy to put the statewide coalition meetings on the SOFSA community calendar. So a lot of these conversations, Micah and Renee and I are bringing back to policy and planning or policy and civic engagement committee. But if folks want to participate independently in the statewide coalition as a representative of SOFSA, you're welcome to dedicate some time to do that. It's really fascinating conversation and a really spitfire group of folks, and it's very exciting to be part of. Oop, you're muted.
Okay, so